Hmm? Ah!
You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode is the thriller film Jaws 2, directed by Jeannot Szwarc, and released June 16th, 1978. It's an interesting name. I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure that out.
Yeah, I went online and listened to the pronunciation, and then I put in there how to pronounce it, because I'm like, well, this is... Yeah, he's a French director.
Nice. And of course, on this episode, if you remember when we did Jaws, the original, way back in season 1 of this podcast.
Oh, man.
We had my other podcast co-host from Strange Indeed on to join us. So, of course, we had to bring her back for the next installment. Rima, so good to have you here.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here talking some more sharks, one of my favorite subjects. So happy to be back with you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's been way too long, so it's a perfect
It has.
reason, perfect time.
Yeah. I decided, Peg, she's got to come back in August anyway, because you know what's coming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so she has to come back.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for that one.
Yeah, that'll be...
It's going to be fun.
That'll be great.
It's the shark movies. And I noticed on the introduction, because Rima's probably used to hearing the same thing when we do Strange Indeed. I just noticed, since I have both of you here, I do that. And I'm Pake the exact same way on both podcasts.
Yes, you do. You totally just insert it from Strange Indeed. It sounds exactly the same.
Yep. Yeah. So we're stoked to have Rima with us for another discussion about amazing sharks, or an amazing shark that does terrible things, as usual, because they often do. So we should get started with our production notes, which is just a little bit of behind the scenes little items that are tied to creation of this film. So it was filmed in Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, all the town scenes. I really think I need to go down there. I mean, I'm so close, I really need to go.
Looks nice. Great.
Yeah. Looks like a cute little town, right? And Navarre Beach in Florida. David Brown and Richard Zanuck returned to produce Jaws 2 because they preferred to be in charge of the project if a sequel was being made. They didn't want anyone else to be involved. The tagline for this one: just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. Yeah, remember that. It's a big one. The budget was $20 million. It grossed $208 million. In fact, Jaws 2 was Universal's biggest box office hit of 1978. It is 116 minutes. Pake, give us a synopsis.
All right. Police Chief Brody must protect the citizens of Amity after a second monstrous shark begins terrorizing the waters. Yeah.
Why do we never listen to him? You would think by now they would know better.
Right.
And yet they don't.
Jaws 2. This shit again?
That should
Really,
have been the tagline.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yep. 4 years later, we revisit Amity Island. And, yeah, it was cool when it started because I see the ferry at the very beginning of the movie, and it just reminds me of, the ferry that existed to my little island that I never ever saw because by the time I was born, there was a bridge. So, yeah.
Nice. There's still a ferry down here in this area-ish with Galveston Island. We still have. our ferry that goes back and forth to the main, like the like from on shore to like the main, like the big island the other stuff is at.
Is it like one of the little ones like in the movie? Is it kind of like one of those big?
No, it's a pretty big. It's a pretty big one. It's a much bigger one than the one in this movie.
Okay.
And the seagulls follow it back and forth every time, and it's so much fun. You can just sit there and feed them.
Cool.
Is it bigger than the one in the menu?
Probably. I don't even remember how big that one was.
It was pretty big.
Yeah. But no,
yeah,
it's a fun thing. Ferries are fun. And it's free, so that makes it even better. It's like a fun, it's like one of the things you can do in Galveston. It's like, well, we could just ride the ferry back and forth. It's free. Just jump on. Well, let's ferry on this conversation to the main topic at hand, Jaws 2. We'll go ahead and talk about the movie. As we do, of course, with a guest, as we kind of go into the... Now it's fun I can say it because we're on podcast.
Yes.
Officially. It's like kind of the official, like, Podcastica style, at least where it really started with the top points. And so we have our top threes with guests. So yeah, we can pick our favorite 3 topics, themes, characters, whatever, you know, it's up to interpretation what your 3 points want to be. Have fun with it sometimes. But of course we got to start with the guest, Rima. What is your first point, number 3?
Thanks.
On this one?
I thought I would start out just talking a little bit about the difference in Brody's character from this sequel, the second movie, from the original. Because I think there are some, or at least he gets to quite a different, like his personality is definitely a little bit different. And of course, there's a good explanation why, because I was curious, you know, doing a little reading up because I didn't know a lot about, like where was it filmed, you know, just kind of looking at those behind the scenes kinds of things. And I remember seeing someone ask a question about why was Brody so angry in the second movie? And I'm like, are we really asking that question?
Right.
Well, let's talk. Let's talk about that because you know, and I'm like, I don't know if that was a serious question or not, or if someone's just being, you know, completely obtuse. But you know, in the beginning, Brody seemed a lot like how we knew him in the first movie, right? You know, he's pretty laid back, and he's, you know, still dealing with like these minor police issues there in Amity because it's all, you know, like. I remember in the first movie, it was like the little kids karate chopping the fences, you know, and, you know, those are the kinds of crimes he's having to deal with. In this one, he's, you know, hearing someone complain about their neighbor daughter dancing in front of the window, you know, and enticing his boy. And I'm like, this is y'all's biggest problems. It's okay. So, you know, we kind of pick up a little bit and you're like, oh yeah, there's Chief Brody. We're good with Brody. He seems, you know, good. We know he survived from the first movie. But then things really take a turn, you know, as these events start to, you know, we've got the missing divers and then this boating accident happens with the skier. And when he sees that picture from the camera from the missing divers, that's when you see this switch. And he is so confident that there's a shark in that photo and that's what he sees. And I see the other folks' points of view when he takes it and presents it to, I guess it's the city council. And they're like, you know, some of the things that they were saying didn't make sense, but I'm like, it is kind of hard to make out what it is. And, you know, you can almost be like, he's kind of seeing what he wants to see. Cause that's kind of where he's going, but you can so feel in that moment, his PTSD has just really come back. And you know, that wasn't really talked about a lot, I think, in those days. You know, this was 1978, right? So, you know, I don't think anybody's really talking about PTSD and the effects that it has and how that can get triggered. And I'm sure at this point it's untreated, you know, for him. But you can feel it all coming back.
Yeah. Martin Brody is not going to a therapist to talk about his issues.
He's not talking about his feelings at all.
I think any therapy he's getting comes in the form of whatever is in the can of beer that he's drinking. That's his support, along with his wife.
It's emotional support beer. Yes.
Or beers, plural.
It's true. And he isn't really talking to his wife either.
Yeah, he doesn't. When he comes home, after he had discovered, the wreckage from the boat and he's in the bathroom, she's like, you know, what's wrong with you? You look a mess. And he's like, oh, just, you know, this, you know, found this. And she's like, well, what's going on? He's like, nothing. It's all good. He's totally keeping it, on the down low with her and not opening up about it at all. So it was, interesting because I'm like, you see him really go far in some of these moments, bringing his gun out on the beach and, shooting out into the water and really just scaring the hell out of the people. And, just looking at it. Yeah. He looks a little like, whoa, he's over the edge, but it's like, well, let's look at what happened. Let's, look at everything that happened in the first movie and what he went through. And you can even hear it in his voice, when he's, in front of the council and he's like, I know what this is and you better do something about this one. Cause I'm not going to go through that hell again, when he's talking to him. So it's like, yeah, the dude went through hell. He was nearly freaking eaten by a shark on a sunken boat, had someone die right in front of him and get eaten. I rewatched that scene. Someone had put in a clip of it, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly why. It's the, where Quint, where the shark comes and gets Quint, and you see, realize again how close Brody was and had to see that. I can't imagine seeing that. I think I'd be pretty messed up too. So, just getting to see, the difference in Martin Brody's character going, from this, easy going, laid back, small town cop, dealing with small town problems, to, really just being stretched to the limits. Now he comes together there in the end, but, he had some moments.
I feel like he's basically gotten into a groove in the town as the sheriff. And he really hadn't thought as much about the shark, except that I think it still played, was in the back of his head. Those memories were still there, but it wasn't like a daily thing. I think it also, he was triggered by the fact that the council's not going to do anything about this. Again, he's faced with the same thing where the council doesn't want to admit there's a problem. And I think that was really frustrating, and that, I think you're right. I think it was the tipping point that just put him over the edge, and that's why he's angry. Yeah. I don't blame him. He knows.
Up close and personal. He knew, with the experience that he had. Yeah. And the freaking mayor in Jaws 2 is the same mayor from Jaws.
Has there not been an election in these past 4 years?
No.
Who the hell reelects this guy?
Surely in 4 years, because there's supposed to be 4 years. Or I don't know. It was from 4 years from the movie.
Yeah,
but...
they say 4 years, but I'm like, man, what are in these Brody genes? Because Mike aged 8 years. I was 4 years.
Yeah,
I wondered. I'm like, there's something a little off about the kids aging. Yeah.
That threw me off a little bit because it was like it's 4 years later, but it's like. No, Mike was not 14 in that first movie. No. There's no way.
No. I don't think so either. There was also, Brody got an award for Man of the Year for Amity Island in 1975. So that they, celebrated the fact that he was partially responsible for the shark getting taken out. But still, Larry, the mayor, is ready to, throw him under the bus. Or kick him out or fire him just because. Money is the root of all.
Yep.
That's what he's focused on.
Yeah, I guess if you want to take his side for half a second, right? Where you're like, I mean, most of the year's income for this island comes from this summer tourist season. That's what it is. And so you don't want to cancel it or push people away or keep them from coming. But also when there's a viable threat, you also don't want to be known as the place that sharks just kill people because we want them to come anyway. You have to, optics are a lot too.
Yeah. And
and they have a Holiday Inn now.
A luxury Holiday Inn.
A Holiday Inn.
Yeah. A resort.
Wow.
I have a hard time understanding how that would fit. Because I'm thinking about the island I grew up on, and I'm like, no, there would be no Holiday Inn there. That would never fit. But yet this community looks so small. It's not dissimilar, so I'm not really sure how Holiday Inn fits on there. But
they managed it somewhere. Yeah. And I didn't read the book. I guess there's a I knew there was a book for the first movie, but I guess there was a book for the second movie. And, I think there was some influence, from that book. I don't know. I haven't read it, and I didn't read too much to see if it was like a faithful adaptation. I don't think that it was, but I think in the book there was an implication that like the mafia was involved and had some, and like Larry, the mayor, was like a front, like they made sure he was in place for like, so they could, do all these underhanded dealings and stuff. So I'm thinking that's the only way it would make sense that dude is still mayor. So
right. I was like, at least there was some explanation for his just like complete
exactly. I'm like, that's the only way that this makes sense to me. I don't think they went there, but
It's interesting because his son's actually out there on the boats with the kids, like with the other teens. Like his son is out there. And at one point he falls in the water and I'm thinking, how's he going to feel if his son dies? I mean, I've seen it a bunch of times. I knew he didn't, but still, I mean, you have to wonder.
And in the first...
He's dismissing this and then... This is a situation.
And in the first movie, he told Brody, he's like, hey, my son was in the water. It seemed like when it finally clicked with him, that, there was a real danger here because, the kids, Mike was in the water and, all the kids were in the water too. And he's like, my son was in the water. And it seemed like it really clicked with him. And he finally signed the papers to give, pay Quint the money, to go hunt the shark. And I'm like, your son is still out in the water, he's still at their boat. He's still, it's just not resonating with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think he's just clueless.
He's a tool.
Really.
Anyway, that's all I had to say.
All right. All right. Now, usually when we do these, it's Daphne that gets to go next. So are we going to follow that or is she going to let me go?
Let you go. Would you like to go next?
It's either way. I don't really mind either way.
He doesn't usually ask to go next. Usually I go. So you know what? Why don't you go next?
I'll go. All right. Just because, I'll go ahead and give my, it was my number one, but biggest point. But, I do this on Strange Indeed all the time, too, where it's just but it's connected, so I just shuffle everything around to flow. They don't have to be any specific order, but it's definitely my biggest order. But, it's, kind of the same joke I made earlier, but Chief Brody featured in this shit again. Where, just we see his, I kind of just wanted to recap in a way his story, but then, why he's so focused on proving that this is what's going on. There is another shark and how he really wants to make sure it's handled. But you see, there's trauma with the whole sharks thing. Because even when there's not really any clues that it could be a shark, like the boat explosion, you even see him talking to that old lady. She's like, what could have caused that explosion? And he's looking out at the water, longingly, I bet it was a shark. What? It's it's a weird, connection to make. It's it's the South American arsonist shark, clearly. But he's already worried about these things. And then the next thing that happens, of course, is the orca, the animal, not Quint's boat, that's dead on the beach. It has these pretty big bites taken out of it, and he's already worried. Looking at that, he's like, oh, round 2, fight, here we go. He's already putting pieces together. He's when he's talking to, Elkins, Dr. Elkins, and he's just so what about the shark? It's the shark. And she's like, well, it could be a shark. He's like, no, it's a shark. I know it's a shark. He's very dead set on that's what's going on. And then, his interactions with Larry Vaughn, which again, he's telling him, oh, don't worry about it. It's, you're overblowing things out of proportion. And I like his line he says to him. He goes, you remember this conversation. As he's storming out and he's telling you remember this. Because it's literally him just being like, okay, so when more people die and you realize it's a shark, it's on you. Off my conscience. Right. Way to go, bud. You had your chance, your opportunity. I'm not putting that blame on me again. So you remember that we had this conversation. And then he goes out and he's just really dedicated on it. He does find the missing boat driver from that explosion, finds her extra crispy. A la carte, though. No combo meal of the daughter or proof of the shark. It's just her. But still, he's like, which again is kind of a weird connection. He's like, look how burnt to a crisp she is. Clearly, shark. But he's going to put that together. But, I mean, he knows, if it's similar situation to the last time, they're just very aggressive and things get out of hand. And they, things can be connected that way. To the point where he's making poison bullets. So he got serious pretty quickly. Where does he get his hands on cyanide to put into these bullets? I don't know. But I don't know if the police chief really has access to that.
Yeah, that's a little concerning, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. And then he just wastes them by just blasting them into a school of fish. Anyway, so you're like, well, it's such an interesting scene to then have Sean kneeling down with him and picking up these bullet casings and just everybody thinks you're an idiot, Dad, but I'm still here for you. And he's trying to protect his oldest son, Mike, under this guise of, get a job, you freeloader, no more fun for you. But he's just doesn't want him in the water, which, again, the things he has seen in the water in these scenarios makes sense. And he's concerning the city council and other people by keeping watch on the beach in this shark tower, the shark cage. Not cage, because that's in the water, but yeah, the tower. Which, that scene, I had a random note. The movie took time to focus on the kinds of things that you see when you look around at the beach. And I get it. I see very similar things that I notice. People swimming, kid with a hot dog, family taking photos. Oh, there's a kid with a kite running by. Butts. I'm still looking at the butts. Okay, look away for a little bit, back at the family photos, and then back at oh, they're gone. No more butts. No, it's a real beach experience in this random footage section. Right? No. But
it's just like in the first movie. Right. I mean, I can almost hear the music that was playing during that scene in the first movie because I've seen it so many times.
Right.
All of that whole montage of the sailing and the dog in the water and people on the beach and it's the same.
Yeah, but then the following scene right there on the beach you mentioned a little bit, Rima, is okay, maybe he is a little too on edge. Even I could tell pretty easily from the times I've spent at beaches. I was like, yeah, that was a school of fish. You can tell even from that height where you were at. So, if you want to be taken seriously, maybe don't go screaming and yelling towards everyone and then shoot wildly into the water near children. Maybe don't do that and people will listen to you a little better. So that one's on you, Chief. But again, it's this trauma. It's interesting, you brought that up, and it really is. It's this PTSD where it wasn't talked about so much, but everything he went through with Alex Kintner and Quint and the orca and all these things. It's dude's messed up. And the idea of this happening again, it's going to kick him into this survival protective mode that he's going to do whatever he has to do, even if it costs him his job. And it does. He takes the photos over to them. Like you mentioned, they don't believe him still, and they end up firing him for this fiasco, which, probably another thing Vaughn can feel really stupid about later.
When he comes in to save the day, yet again.
Right. I again, random thoughts, because you know how I am. I have those random, little tangent thoughts while watching things. Where I was if he would have turned on his lights in the police truck when he was following the ambulance to see what was going on, would that be impersonating a police officer? Even though he's in a real police vehicle that he owned, hadn't turned in yet, he had been fired. So I was is that, could they charge him with that? Yeah.
I think so.
The thoughts I have.
I don't think I would want him to be charged, but yeah.
But I guess technically it's you're not an officer anymore, but you're still flipping on your lights to get through traffic and people and stuff. So technically would it be impersonation?
Pake, do you really think that Hendrix would want to go and arrest him?
Oh, no. Well, that's even whenever he's commandeering the boat to go after the kids. He's you can't be on the boat. You're not with the job anymore. And then finally he's screw it. I guess if I'm going with you, then it's fine.
They can't fire us.
Yeah.
No,
they can't. 3 cops on the.
All they've got, really.
Yeah. There's that one other random cop that I don't even know who it is, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's the one that doesn't matter at all.
No.
He's the one that brings the donuts in the morning. That's his job.
Yeah, it's important. I think he was taking Tina to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
he's good as a chauffeur, driving things around.
Yeah.
People around. Yeah.
So talk about that. Yeah, so him and he learns from Hendrix that because he's like, oh yeah, the kids are all out there. So and he's like, what kids? And he's like, oh, this person, and Mike. And he's like, wait, Mike's supposed to be at work. Which I mean, Brody, that's kind of on you for being naive enough to think Mike got up early to go to work.
Right.
That's on
teenagers
you,
don't do that. No. No.
Yeah, so he learns that they went off to the lighthouse, so he's going to commandeer the police boat, no matter what. And then on the way, of course, they run into Tina, who is severely traumatized herself, understandably. I'm sure we'll talk about all that later at some point. And then we just get the adventures of Brody riding around aimlessly on a boat with the radio that sometimes works. Until he finally runs into Mike and Timmy and the other guy, I think.
And the other guy, yeah.
So good news, Mike's okay. Bad news, Sean's still out there on the floating dinner plate. So gotta go after the young one now. And then he's so close. He finds the kids. Then the shark runs him in that boat into the rocks. Which, again, then they were like, well, they already said they're stuck. So I was like, why are you throwing them rope? That's not going to do anything. They said they're stuck. But then I was like, okay, maybe the pulley with the hooks might do something, but no, instead, the power cable that Hendrix found earlier definitely came back. I figured it would. So we need something special to save these kids from old Bernie there. And that's the shark. I gave the shark a couple different names. He's Burnsides, Two-Face, or Bernie. That was my names for this shark.
One, Bernie's in the sequel.
Yeah.
They actually call him Bruce too. And then others have determined it's a female shark, and they call her Brucette. Yeah.
I like mine. Yeah, he remembers Elkins says something about the sharks being drawn by sound, so he's distracting him away from Sean and old Alabama Shakes there. Man, that actress, she was good at just shaking and shivering. Man.
They wanted a hysterical part. They wanted her to play a hysterical person.
Well, she nailed it. I was hoping they were going to push her into the water and let the shark have her. Honestly, she always got on my damn nerves every time I watched this movie. Yeah,
always.
I know, it's like she just starts screaming like right at the camera, and I'm just like, okay, no, that's enough. I get it. She's scared, but it's a little much.
Well, even Sean watches Marge, get eaten in front of him, and he's not running around screing,
right, like
she is.
He's more in like a trauma daze. He's kind of just zoned out, like yeah. But then we saw the shark take down a helicopter, so I was like, I don't know, this inflatable dinghy's gonna do you much good. But I guess good thing it was rubber, because it turned out to be the perfect cover when he ingeniously lures the shark into biting down on that power cable and saves the day with one hell of a fish fry. Which, and again, similarly to the first movie, where it's just like, and then it's over, credits. Like, it's just like, oh, that's it. That's all we got. Like, they just show up so quickly. And you're like, oh, it's over now. Okay, cool.
Did you happen to notice the smoke coming out of the shark's eyes?
Yes, I thought that was interesting.
I was like, huh. I've seen this movie so many times, but that was the first time I noticed the smoke was coming out of the eyes.
Yeah. Sure did.
It's like, oh, okay.
It's like they just took the whole, like, mechanical, like, whatever, like, the whole shark thing that they had built and just, like, lit a bunch of flares on the inside of it and just let it just... Like,
probably.
That's cool.
Whatever works. Mm-hmm. It had to work better than the mechanical shark on the first movie.
Yeah. Yeah, let's not, like, have it actually try to kill people.
No.
But
that'd be better.
So that's, it was definitely my longest point, but so it was more just, like, get it out of the way. But yeah, just talking about Chief Brody and, kind of his story and, where you just see this insanity that he has to go through again. Mm-hmm. He's like, and again, he tells Mayor Vaughn, like, I'm not doing this again, and then he does it again, because nobody else gives him any other choice.
If you keep doing it, people are going to expect you to do it again.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Send Larry out to take care of it.
And I think it's
Send Mayor Vaughn out.
Yeah, I think it's because Mike and Sean were out there. That
absolutely.
Because I almost feel like if they weren't, like his kids were just like still at home, he'd be like, "Fuck it, somebody else do this. I'm done."
Yeah, I think that's the only way he could work up the bravery to like literally be in that like the just little rubbery dinghy, holding onto that freaking cable, like just egging on that shark to come at you. I mean, it's literally just just cannot even imagine. I get that's the movie, but if that was something that like could really happen, I'd be pissing my pants. I'd just be like, no, there's no way. Too scared.
Yeah, because the kids didn't know what his plan was. They're all like, "What are you doing? It's coming right at you. Move, do something."
I think that's the only way you could work up the bravery to do something like that is knowing that it's like your kids are in danger. So, yeah.
But so that was
That's
that
awesome.
one. So now, Daphne, you get to round it out. Switched it on us because
doesn't often happen.
Subtly.
You subtly hinted that you wanted to go next? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so my first point that I want to bring up is I want to talk about Ellen Brody, actually, because I think she's pretty fantastic, and I didn't notice it so much in the first one, but in this movie, I like that she's not afraid to stand up to her husband, like, especially talking about, Mike was supposed to get a summer job, and he's 17, despite however he got there, Pake, because I don't know if there's some time machine
whatever time travel he went through to get there,
So, while I encourage and think that it's great for kids to have a summer job, having been out in the working world for all the time that I have, don't send your kids off to work full-time every day, every week of the summer. Let them have some bit of childhood, even when they're 17 years old. Like, a part-time job is fine, but to tell him he's got, in a year or two, he's going to be in college and working and doing all these things. Let him hold on to being a kid for just a little bit longer, because kids grow up way too fast anyway, and this is just shoving him out the door I can't imagine. So I appreciated that she kind of stood up to him about the job in the first place, and then when he's talking about it taking the whole summer right up till school starts, she actually pushes back at him again. But that's when school starts. That's the whole summer. It's important for kids to be kids, even teenagers, even though sometimes they're neurotic or they cry a lot and freak out on boats or floating meal plates. So I liked that. And I liked that she did push her husband to talk to her, even though he didn't follow through with it. To me, she had a little more, not necessarily authority in this movie, but I felt like she was more on a more even playing field with him. There was something I had read in preparation for this where at one point they thought about having her go with him on the boat to rescue the kids. And someone put a kibosh to it. I don't know why, but I think it would have been cool to see, how she would have reacted. Maybe she could drive the boat better than he did, because, let's face it, he can't drive worth crap.
Spoiler alert. We got to see that in Jaws 4.
So I would have... Yeah. So, I mean, maybe, I saw Jaws 4 one time. I don't remember anything about it,
I haven't
really.
seen any of I had never even seen this one. To be honest, I had no intention of ever seeing this one until...
Really?
You guys had kind of talked about it. And then looking into it a little more and realizing with the reviews, I was like, oh, this one's actually decent. Okay, good.
Yeah. It's kind of the last one. I mean, 3, there are a couple things about 3 that are okay, I guess. Except for the 3D imaging and the shark coming at the screen, which it just looks ridiculous.
That was just like a big fad at times.
It was a time.
Yes.
I never cared for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of messed up. I also loved when she kind of pushed back at Len when he was trying to apologize to her. I'm so sorry. She's just she just basically tells him off and says, my husband and son are still out there. I'm she's focused on that. She's not thinking about whatever he thinks he needs to apologize for, any of that. Which the guy that played Len, Joe Mascolo, way back in my teenage years, I used to watch soaps with my mom. Days of Our Lives, he played this really bad character named Stefano Demira, and I guess he was on there long after I stopped watching. But I have no problems like looking at both of them and say, yep, you're a good villain, even though in this one weren't quite as bad. But I also read the same thing about the mob being in the book, and I was thinking he might be part of that. Because he just seems like he'd be the perfect, gateway into that world. Yeah. But yeah, so I really just want to talk about I really wanted to talk about Ellen Brody as one of my points. I also liked the way she comforted Tina. Let's face it, Martin Brody has the bedside manner of a rabid bat. I mean, he's just not good.
No.
And he knows it because as soon as she's he finds Tina and he he gets her out from under where she was, he's like, Ellen. He knew.
Tagging you in. I'm not my strong suit.
He can't deal with it. He can't deal with it at all.
Oh, that's...
Yeah. I like that you brought her up with stuff, because not only in her own family, but we see, like her husband, she has become a very important part of this community. She's working with, she's heavily involved with the hotel or, the resort and stuff coming in. She's heavily involved in a lot of the beach activities and things that are going on. People know her in the community as a planner and a go-getter.
It's a big difference from what we saw in the first movie, because I believe they had just moved to the community. They hadn't been there that long. So we get to see what them living in Amity or on Amity Island for the last 4 years has been like, despite, as we said, a child going from 10 to 17 in the same breath, really. But I think she needs props. She definitely needs more props because she grew, I think, in between the first film and this one. It makes me want to watch 4 again because I want to kind of see where she's at in that one. But then I also don't want to go back to it because sometimes it's better just to leave it where it is.
If you just try to just take it for its entertainment value and, it's not great, but you got it. There's a campiness to it, where it's just like, whatever. But yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned Ellen Brody. I agree with you. I think that she deserves more props for, her character because she's a strong, female character. And, I don't know that there were a lot of roles in that time for women like that. And I like that she was strong. It felt more like they had a partnership, her and Martin. You could really, always feel this affection that they had towards each other. You really got it in the first movie. You got it again, here, this, the bond of their relationship and the strength of their relationship, and that they still have fun with each other. Like in the beginning when they're dancing and he's like, oh, why don't we get out of here? And she's like, oh, I go fool around. And he's like, why not? They're still able to be kind of playful with each other, even though they've, probably been married for however many years. But then also I love how she's always got, Brody's back, when the one woman's like, well, what is your husband doing up there? And she's like, his job. She knows,
that was so good.
Something, she knows that but she's still like, okay, you know what? Don't badmouth my husband. He's doing his job, back off. So, I always love that about her too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. She does have his back. I feel like they're much more of a team in this one because they both have their legs under them being in this community. So, I definitely liked it. So, that's my point. Awesome. I think we're back around to Rima.
Yeah. So I thought I'd just kind of talk a little bit about how the sequel for Jaws 2 is, I think, geared and set up more like a slasher film. Do y'all agree?
Kind of, yeah.
We don't have a psycho serial killer necessarily. We've got a shark that's kind of filling the role. So it's a little different, but I feel like it still kind of follows that same trope. Especially this teen victims that it keeps going after, in this third act, this is where the shark is headed. It's, going after its victims and, they're in the water. They're not, being punished for having sex. They just happen to be in its territory, in the waters or whatever. And even, so many of the slasher films like Freddy Krueger, he's got his burns and he's got his gloves with the nails. Michael Myers is disfigured in some way. Jason Voorhees, was disfigured. So is the shark. It's got that burn on the side of its face, so that's kind of got that whole trope.
But that's never been like I don't know why it has the burn.
It was from, I think it's from when he attacks the boat.
The fire.
Because that mother dumped gasoline all over him. And herself.
There were bad decisions in this movie, very much like a slasher kind of movie.
I don't... that whole scene with the boat destruction with the gas and the flip, that is probably my one issue, I think, with this movie, is that whole scene was just kind of like, really?
It's a little over dramatic. Yeah,
it is.
And the boat just then explodes in this huge fiery inferno, and you're like, okay, sure.
Yeah, it seemed crazy that she'd be running around, or she'd be driving the boat and have the gas can not have a cover on it. Like, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
it just seems a little off to me.
Oh no, shark attack. Better douse myself in gasoline.
And light a flare. Yeah, I can see,
right.
I get it. She's panicking, but wow, so many bad decisions made in such a short amount of time. And I get the flare, if you want to try to shoot it to scare it away, or even, with its mouth open, if you've got to get enough aim, and maybe you don't because the boat's being rocked by this thing attacking your boat, but, trying to scare it, or even if you could manage to get it in its mouth to, scare it away and give it some pain in some way, if that's possible for such a large shark. So I get where she was going, but the whole dousing of the gasoline when you're on a small boat like that, and it's all over the floor, it's all over you. She's literally pouring it over her head. It's like she wasn't even trying to.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, every time. That's the one scene in this movie that I'm just like, oh gosh. It just sticks out as being
and I
strange.
Noticed her daughter that was skiing's name was Terry.
No
so
way.
I had to...
Yes,
Terry!
I knew it.
She's yelling at Terry, and I was like, everything's on fire. Back up, Terry! Oh wait, no, you've already been eaten. Never mind. You're good.
I knew that you were going to bring that up because ever since we did The Gate with Terry...
Yes.
It's just been a continuous thing about Terry. Anyone named Terry, it comes into the conversation.
It's a good movie.
And it always goes back.
The Gate.
Very good.
It was underrated, man. Nobody talks about it. That movie scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
We did. We had some fun, but we're not going to cover The Gate too.
Probably. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. Let the first one just stand.
Although I think it's all about Terry, though, Pake. Are you sure you don't want to cover it?
It's tempting.
One of his favorite characters from season 4. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just, for me anyway, I get like a total slasher kind of vibe, that they were, trying to work in, in this film, which was, I think different than the first one. I mean, he even has his own, and he had it in the first too, his own music, every time the villain or killer, when they're out stalking about, right? They've always got their own music when that they're close or around or stalking about. So yeah, it just fits all the fun things about those slasher movies back in the day, and just happens to, be a shark. This time. But there were scary moments. I mean, up until that woman doused herself in gasoline. That
oh my God.
scene,
yeah.
you know, because I remember watching it way back for the first time as a kid, scared the crap out of me. You know, I mean, I've talked about my fear of, you know, water and sharks and boats and things. And so, I mean, just, you know, like that really hit me in my soul. The, you know, attacking the helicopter, you know, that was a scary scene. Eddie getting attacked and the thump on the boat. Oh my word.
Oh God. That was pretty brutal. Also, he's getting dragged and then just whack. And you're like, oh nope. No, that's not good.
Eddie, he's not coming back after that. But yeah, it just had some really great, I think, scary movies. But I read, it was interesting because I feel like that's what they were kind of going for, is kind of the slasher type film. But yet I read that they had, audiences had felt the first movie was too bloody and gory. And so they had like toned it down, like as far as like the blood and the gore in this one. But I'm like, well, if it's a slasher film, shouldn't we have like, you know, either the same or even more? So I thought that was interesting. I didn't realize that until recently that, oh yeah, it does have, I mean, there's blood obviously, but it's not as, you know, overt and it wasn't as, I think as, gory a little bit as the first. Yeah. So yeah, love the slasher kind of theme they were going for.
Nice. I like that too. I didn't think about it until you mentioned it, but it really was kind of like that.
Yeah.
Even in the way that they revealed the shark, like we got to see more of it earlier on in this one because I had read an item on Wikipedia and it basically said they knew they were never going to be able to have the suspense that they got in the first one by holding it out for so long. So they just started giving more than just, oh, here's a fin. Just barely. You kind of get alluded to what it is. But I like that. I like the idea of looking at this like a slasher movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I was like, I didn't really think of it that way until you said it. And I'm like, oh, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, it's good. It's kind of unique. And I have some notes that I'll talk about once we get into behind the scenes stuff at the end. There were some things about this movie that it went through some processing through different directors and writers, and it was definitely a complicated process to bring this movie to light.
Interesting.
Yeah, and same. Jeannot Szwarc was not the first director. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
All right.
So well, Pake, it's your turn.
Going with that like slasher theme, my other 2 points kind of either one I could go with, and I'm trying to see which one I want to go with first. The quick one, because I did my longest one last time, so I'll do the shortest one. They're just some teenage dirt bags, baby, right?
I want that to be on my phone as your text. If you text me, I want that to play. It's great.
Just the teenager story arc, which early on in the movie, I have a note. I said, I already don't care about the teenagers and their like all their crushes and that storyline. I was like, that like right away, like they're talking about, oh my god, this wicked girl likes you at that, and then like at the party, and then the next scene they're like sitting at the dock. She's like, ooh, what do you think of that girl? And ooh, is she gonna talk to me? And I was like, I'm over it so much already. I don't care. I don't need teenage crush romance. I hate all of these kids.
Shark can eat
Come on now. I liked Timmy. I felt like he at least was just kind of like, yeah.
Well, see, and that's how I felt at first, and then I'm glad that they didn't like, of course you have Tina and Eddie who are, you know, like your classic, like, oh, the lovebirds who just always going off and doing their things. It's like, that's fine. But, like, it wasn't focused on, like, the love triangles and who's dating who and who has a crush on who. Like, they set it up that way to kind of get, it's like they're kids, they're teenagers. That's what this is.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't really focus on that as they come together as more of a group of survivors, you know, instead.
Yeah.
Which I enjoy that better. I will say the black-haired kid with the glasses is Douglas.
Oh, yeah.
Rima might enjoy this. Immediately reminded me 100% of Dimitri from Cobra Kai. That's who I just kept thinking it was. Like, and I was like, I know this is like way, way, way before that, but like that's who it reminded me of so much.
Yeah, he really does.
But says I'm watching these and I was like, man, Larry Jr. sucks just like his dad. Where he's just very like sexist and douchey to his friends and everybody. I'm just like, well, don't like
douchey
you
commenting
already.
About that girl's body. I can't even think of her name, but their friend's cousin. Yeah, and I'm
Jackie.
like, dude,
Jackie,
yeah,
he's a douche.
Mm-hmm. You know, that actor regretted, like that was an ad lib, and he has regretted it ever since. It's something they kept in. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, we talked about, Michael sneaking out to go sailing and stuff with his friends. Sean pulls the ultimate little brother move of take me with you or I'm telling. Works every time.
Did that happen to you, Pake? You have little brothers.
I was gonna say, I feel like there's a story there.
I don't know if I really dealt with it too much. I mean, there were definitely, because I have 2 younger brothers. I'm the oldest of 3 boys. And so there are those moments where it's like, I'm included, or I get to get away with this, or else I'm telling you that about this, or that I'm they have that card. They do. Mm-hmm. Like it's like the older sibling. You have the most power, but they do have that gameplay when they want it.
Yeah, it's the same with sisters too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a sibling thing. Yeah, totally.
And then, of course, Mike is probably going to regret letting that "do you always do what your parents tell you to do" line working on him, because this outing is not going to turn into a fun one. And then, again, I said, does Brody really think that Mike got up early to go to work? He's so naive. Oh, I'm proud of my son. Mm-hmm, sure.
Yeah, no. Pay attention. Be a dad. You know these kids are not listening.
And then the shark attacks and stuff, which is a separate point that we could talk about. So just, again, talking about, like, the teens themselves and everything they go through is, like, they're survivors. I mean, as far as, like, everything's going on, they just get hit with sheer chaos and boats flipping and people falling into the water. But they do a really good job at, like, pulling each other out of the water, saving each other, like, working together. They come, there's one of the boats, the Sea Witch, which is titled, that had Timmy and the other guy, again, don't know his name.
Yeah. Timmy ended up in that boat after the first initial crashes where everything went to hell with the sailboats.
Yeah. And they're the ones that pick up Mike, like, last second. And then it's their job, since it's the only boat that's still sailing. Like, they have to take Mike back to safety and then also try to get help, while the rest of these kids are all just sitting out there in open water. It's a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility on them. But they take off. Luckily enough, they don't end up having to do too much. They run into Brody later on and can tell him, point them in the direction of where to go to get to the rest of the kids. So they do find help, and they get Mike to safety there. And it was smart thinking, though, that these immediately, what do they do? Throw ropes back and forth to each other and tie all of these flipped boats and crash boats together. Make one giant, like, flotilla surface, like have everybody work together to
like that.
That made sense. I mean, kind of.
It was very smart thinking. Make this connected platform, and because one, just so they're all together,
stronger.
But
together.
Then when help does come, they even said, like, then somebody can just pull us all back instead of having to tie all the boats off and stuff. Then it's like, we're already all tied together, so then you just tie one to whoever, and they pull us back, which is what the helicopter tries to do. It doesn't go so well. But
try is the word.
Right. And then after that situation, then Sean's boat has come untethered. Marge no longer on that boat with him. And she
jumped in to get him.
She did.
She sacrificed herself.
She did. She jumped in, got Sean back onto the boat, and then couldn't get back on and just got crunched. It was brutal. The sounds, right in front of Sean. He's going to grow up with the exact same trauma his dad. Man.
Yeah, he's going to have problems.
Yeah, and then Sean's going to just, like, float off on his own. And again, like I mentioned, he's in that, like, trauma daze. Like, they're yelling at him. They're like, Sean. It was like, Andy is, like, that classic, like, because he's Mike's, like, best friend.
Yeah.
And, like, I've seen that, again, like, I've, like, formed connections with my younger siblings' friends. Like, we're not necessarily, like, best friends, you know, or, like, my friends' younger siblings and stuff like that, too, where it's, like, I wouldn't consider us super close friends, but, like, also, you, by proxy, like, care for them and protect them and, like, stick up for them because that's your friend's little brother, and, like, if you're close with them, then, like, you're gonna have that kid's back, too. So I get that. So it's Andy that can really reach out to him, but he's doing it in that classic way. He was like, you stupid little asshole, listen to me, you know, like, it's very, like, how does he get to him, you know, because when you're that close, it almost is kind of an endearment to, like, torture a little kid like that, you know, like, when you're that close, you can say things like that, and it's endearing in a way, you get it, you know?
And because you have to shock them. He's in shock, so you have to get his attention.
Right.
And you can't do it in a way that's, you know, Sean is not working.
Yeah, no, he's literally like, you listen to me, you turn around and you grab this rope, or I'm going to pummel you. I'm going to kick your ass. You know, and he's like, oh, okay. Which he does. He kind of breaks him out of that stupor, so it's good. And brings him back, and they're all pretty freaked out. I mean, obviously, but you even see, like, Andy is, like, that connection. He's, like, hugging on him and kissing him on the cheek, and he's like, oh, my God. It was just, like, because it is, again, like, it's, like, your little brother by proxy. So I can see, like, their connection as friends and, like, with that family is close.
Totally.
And then, I was gonna say that maybe Larry Jr. was getting better because he was being really sweet to Sean, but then all of a sudden he starts, like, shaking Jackie and pushing people around and, like, almost knocking him into the water. I was like, nope, still a dick. Never mind.
No reprieve.
No growth for him.
These Vaughns just don't learn, do they?
No, they don't. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, and then that's really about them, because then Brody shows up past that point, and then it's him again kind of calling the shots and taking things. But they definitely went through a lot, and I think as far as just, like, this group of kind of annoying teenagers that at the beginning of the movie, I was like, I'm already over them, and I don't care at all, to being like, okay, good. Like, the ones that did survive and fought for it, I was, like, rooting for them by the end. So I was like, okay, cool.
Because some of them were decent people.
Yeah.
Like, the way that they worked together to get everything pulled together and then get Sean on the boat and all of that, you know, was endearing. But it does remind me, some of them, Larry Jr. to be one, of the annoying guy in a Friday the 13th that you just want Jason to kill. It's like, will you just take him out because I can't take it anymore.
Right.
And this was a little earlier than my time, but I guess I didn't realize it until I rewatched. And I'm like, I've seen this movie I don't know how many times, but it wasn't until rewatching it that I'm like, these kids are in a bar.
I was like, and some of them were drinking beer, clearly.
They're 17. Larry was drinking a beer and smoking cigarettes. And I know that it was a lot different. I get it was 1978. For the smoking, I mean, you know, but I'm like, the dude's got a Miller Lite can in his hand. I'm like, what kind of bar? Like, these kids are clearly kids.
Do you think maybe it's because his father is the mayor, they could let him get away with it at the bar? And these are his friends? I don't know,
but look, in most small towns, you know, you don't get away with too much.
Everyone knows.
People are going to find out.
Everyone knows everybody. Yes.
Everyone knows you. Yeah, and definitely like the mayor's son. And maybe they don't care. Maybe he does get away with it because he's the mayor's son. But all the other kids, like, I'm just like, are we just serving a bunch of 17-year-olds? I mean, look, I get it was different times, but I'm pretty sure that the legal limit was still like 21, I think, right? I mean, I haven't done the research or anything, but I'm just like, I can't imagine like the bartender, again, being in this small town, doesn't know every single one of those kids and their families and know that they're underage. And it's like, we're just serving them up alcohol now? Like they're just hanging there playing darts and having a good time. And I'm like, what the hell? There's not enough fake IDs to go around for everyone.
A lot of times too, when it's a small town like that, your mom's going to know before you even get home what you've been up to. Because somebody's going to see you and call and say, did you know Mike's down at the bar playing darts? I think he's smoking or drinking, any of that. Not that he was, but I'm just saying that is how
I will say, when they showed Mike sitting at the bar, I'm pretty sure he just had like a Coke. Like he was actually.
Yeah. Bad example, but what I mean. I'm just saying that.
But you can't even sit, like, I grew up at a bar, my parents owned a bar and I grew up in a bar and I wasn't even allowed, and we lived upstairs. We had an apartment above the bar. And so when you come down the stairs to get to the kitchen, cause I used to always go to the kitchen and make myself food, in the back of the bar all the time after school. And I wasn't even allowed, like, if anyone had seen me or we'd been reported for me running from where our door was from our apartment to run to the kitchen really quick, could have gotten us like shut down or something, much less going and sitting at the bar. That's definitely not legal. So I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's just like, it's fine. We're on Amity. Nobody cares. But I'm like, is no one like,
this bar is full of children
concerned?
Yeah.
I was like, it did look like they were all high schoolers. It was just bizarre. And I'm like, nice. Nobody cares.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
It's great.
Yeah.
All right. Daphne, what's your next one?
So I want to talk about the sharks. This is a little behind the scenes before behind the scenes. I wanted to share a little bit about what I found out. So they had 3 sharks built for this one. Unfortunately, the sharks from the original movie had rotted behind sheds. Yes.
Oh, saltwater.
On a lower lot of Universal Studios in the time in between. The only pieces that were salvageable were like the frame pieces. So they could use those. The first one, they call the platform shark. So Robert Mattei and Roy Arbogast were the effects supervisors on the creation of the sharks. They were able to use the same body mold. Although this design was more complicated and much more ambitious than it was in the first film. Remember how many times we heard about that falling apart and never working and all the issues that they had with it. But they used the same male type body, but they had a new head that was made by Chris Mueller and an all new mouth mechanism. And it incorporated these jowls that disguised the pinching of the cheeks that had been a problem with the shark in the first movie. The sharks for Jaws 2 were known as Bruce 2, but on set they called them Fidel and Harold. The other shark props that they had were a fin and a full shark. Both could be pulled by boats. They did a lot more. They had a bigger budget, but they never really told the studio how much they were spending on the movie because they would never have approved a budget of like $20 or more million. They just wouldn't. So they just kind of said, well, we're paying for this and we're paying for this. And they kind of kept it a secret. They knew they couldn't duplicate what had been done by keeping the shark such a surprise in the first one. So they did things a little bit differently in this one. And, yeah.
Makes sense.
And it was conscious. Them scarring the shark after the fire incident was a conscious decision because they wanted it to look more menacing. So yeah.
It worked.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Nice. I like that.
That's awesome.
So Rima, do you have one last main point?
Well, kind of. It's really short and it's more of just, I think, an appreciation for, this movie as a sequel. I don't know that there were a whole lot of sequels. In this day, I'm not going to say that there weren't any at all, and I certainly don't have a list of them. But there weren't as many. And of course they're going to make a sequel to the first movie, right? Because it was huge. Huge block. It was like the first real summer blockbuster. So of course they're going to, go for another cash grab, and try to see if lightning can strike twice. And I know that there were some issues. I know Roy Scheider did not want to be a part
he
of
definitely did not.
And you could No. And I wonder, I'm like, I wonder how much of the anger that we see in the movie that I was talking about earlier was either acting or was it real because he's just pissed off because he's actually having to film this movie.
Yeah.
Because he really didn't want to. But, all in all, because the first film, it didn't really lend itself to a sequel, right? Like, I didn't feel like there was, when the first story ended, like, it was kind of done. Like, you didn't feel like, oh, well, wait, we got to see what happens next, or there's more. They leave you with something that, thinks that there would be a sequel. So there wasn't a whole lot left to tell. And, the characters, the tension, everything was so great in the first one that you're like, they really can't recreate that. So I think that's maybe why they took a little bit of a different direction with it. And then, a lot of Jaws 2 does not get enough love.
Agreed.
It's not perfect, but gosh, when you look at 3 and 4, 2 is definitely better.
Oh, yeah.
But like I said, I can definitely enjoy look, 3 has Dennis Quaid.
Leah Thompson,
and
2. Leah Thompson's in it.
Leah Thompson. Yeah. And, I can't say no to a Dennis Quaid movie. He's, been a treat since I was a kid. So he makes it just a little bit better. And then 4 is just so darn campy. I mean, it's not good, but, there's like some funny, just ridiculous moments or something that just whatever. So I can definitely enjoy them for their strict entertainment, value. But I don't think Jaws 2 gets enough because it's really not that bad.
I think it's a decent sequel.
So.
Yeah, there's like a review that I saw before I watched it. I mean, I was like, I'm going to watch it anyway because we're covering it. But like, when I go on to IMDb to kind of get some like basic ideas of what I'm getting into and like characters and cast and stuff. So I have my note, I like to have that next to me with notes so I can throw characters' names and stuff in. And I was looking at some of like the just kind of quick reviews that were on IMDb. And that was where everybody kind of landed. They were like, it's tropey. It follows a lot of those things. It's like, but it's not bad. Like, it's just like, there are many way worse sequels out there. Like, it still kind of holds the vibe of Jaws pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And Roy Scheider, for as much as what he, I don't think enjoyed the experience, didn't really want to be there, and, just had to do with contracting, he really holds the film together. He really, had a good, firm hold on the character. And I think he, it's just, without him, I think it would have went a different direction. Yeah. So I'm really glad that, whether he wanted to be there or not, I think he really helped make the movie
He had
good.
some issues with the director. The two of them did not get along.
Yeah.
And that didn't help the situation very much. And there was more than that. There are some real wacky things, but I have them in my notes. So I'll be bringing those up.
I had a feeling you'd probably cover them. Yeah. So that was really just my main last point, was just like, give a little love, to a sequel, because I don't, a lot of people just kind of poo-poo on this one because it's, doesn't live. And it, I mean, look, you can't recreate that. Jaws is something special, but it's still pretty good for what it is. So just want to give it a shout out.
Well, my last point are, the shark attacks and close calls and just the great action and horror shark slasher scenes that we get throughout the movie. This one starts like the first movie, underwater, not from the shark's perspective, but we do get an attack and stuff with the shark there at the beginning still. It's through these like divers' perspective. These divers are taking pictures of and with the Orca, Quint's boat from the first movie, which has sunken to the ocean floor. I would assume, I guess it's kind of famous lore to some people.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Then the next time we really get a hint of the shark is with the kids out playing around, parasailing, boating, skiing, all of these things. And they really focus on this one kid that just keeps getting dipped in and out of the water on the parasail. Getting the shark's attention. It's like, we're steeping the water with teen. And he's a fancy shark, and he already has his crumpets ready, so why not? It's time. Talked about Terry, and then our boat explosion. Then the other divers, before the shark really goes after the teens. They're out looking for lobster and enjoying the views.
Did you notice that with the lobster? That was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't notice that the 10 other times I've watched this.
They're kind of just this like group of divers. And so, if you look to your left, you'll see some sugar kelp. Look straight ahead. There's a striped killifish. No, killifish, not killer fish, dummy. That we don't have any. Oh no, to your right, shit. That's the killer fish. That's the shark. Okay, Two-Face, the shark. That's the killer fish. Comes up out of nowhere, scares the crap out of that one diver, who has like stress, peels the mask off, swims up, and I'm like, even before he got taken by the hospital, the ambulance, and people were saying, as I'm watching that scene, I was like, well, that's how you get the bends. Do you want the bends? Like, that's exactly.
Yeah. We know what's happening.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. That's when Brody follows the ambulance, and they have that diver and embolism from going to the surface too fast. It's like, yeah, that's what happens. The shark scares that diver, but he doesn't quite get the meal he wants. So, oh, look, a bunch of sailboats. Buffet time. Just head over that direction. But on the way, one sailboat, of course, is left behind. They're kind of out doing their own thing. And I wrote a little poem to commemorate the scene. And Tina's boat and I wrote this one. There's no ChatGPT involved. This is all me.
You knew where I was going.
It's all me. In Tina's boat, named Tina's Joy, we see Tina and Tina's boy. Tina's boy, his name was Ed. Thanks to the shark, he's fucking dead. Tina's toy turned the water red.
Oh my god. Poor Eddie. He was such a nice kid. I mean, he was. Oh, man. Okay.
Then the shark catches the rest of the boats. It's sheer chaos. Boats flipping, crashing into each other, kids falling into the water. Mike gets knocked out. Luckily, he was actually wearing a life vest, so he's just like floating unconscious in the water with a shark barreling right at him. But they get him out just in time. Then the helicopter scene. Todd shows up, gets them tied. But then like the sounds of because we even see like the underwater viewpoint of the shark, which is cool. Then because like the blades whirring and all the kids cheering drags the shark right back in, and then all Burnside is back, and the damn shark takes down a whole ass helicopter. And I was like, well,
yes.
Yes.
You didn't think a little thing like a helicopter was going to stand in their way, right?
Right. Mm-mm. And then we talked about poor Marge. Heroic sacrifice when a couple of the kids get knocked back in, including Sean, and she goes in after him, saves him, but then does not go well for her at all.
No.
R.I.P.
So yeah, that was kind of the last point. Is just talking about that shark's a killer. He's a man eater.
There was an extended scene to that helicopter scene. Nice. It wasn't super long, but you got to see a little bit about after the shark flipped the helicopter. It's on YouTube. You could probably go check it out there. But yeah, you got to kind of see a little bit of what happened when he got knocked into the water. So I'd say go check that out.
Yeah, because in just the final cut, the original cut of the movie, you're like, and the pilot just goes under with it, and that's all you see. Like you're like, well, what happened to him?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it had to do with the part I mentioned earlier where there were some folks that thought the first one was too gory and bloody, so they tried to dial it back a little bit. So I guess they thought this was a little too scary or too something, and they like cut that extended part out. So, I thought it was great. I was like, why did she left that in there?
Look it up. Yeah.
But yeah, check it out. I don't want to spoil it for anyone in case you want to go check it out and haven't seen it. So it's not super long. It's just another little extra minute or so, but it's worth it.
Cool. So that was that point. So Daphne, do you have?
I want to talk a little bit about some of the quotes that were in this.
Nice.
They were really funny.
Oh,
yeah. When Martin and Ellen are talking about Mike wanting to go out on the boat, Brody says, "What is it about this place? Everyone's a boat freak." And Ellen says, "It's an island." It's like, yeah, of course. And when Martin is talking to Dr. Elkins about it being a shark and revenge, and she says, sharks don't take things personally, Mr. Brody. Like, yep, that's a good one as well.
Apparently they do.
When Sean's asking about what comes after Cable Junction, I think the guy, I'm not even sure of his name.
Andy.
But the response, yeah, the Atlantic, then Ireland. It's like, okay. And then also near the beginning because we get to see Chief Brody coming to this big grand opening of the Holiday Inn Amityville. Not Amityville, but Amity Island. Before Amityville, there was Amity Island. Whole other franchise.
Whole other movie.
Whole other franchise.
Yeah.
Okay. And she says to him, listen, do me a favor, act as if you've been here the whole time. He's like, well, how do I do that? And she says, just look bored. I'm like, oh, is it that simple? Okay, that's cool.
I can do that. Easy.
Yeah, it's easy.
And at one point, Brody, they're having a discussion about what to do about the shark and if it even is there. I think it's around the council. And he says, you don't have to worry about being sued or being ruined if this turns out to be what I think it is, because there won't be anybody here. At one point, Andy said, I think it might have been in the bar, he said, or it could not have been in the bar. He says, do you know that this place is the only one where the garbage man delivers? So I thought that was funny. And again, this one kind of refers to the misconception that Mike's gone to work. Martin's like, Mike's gone. He's making out early these days. Must be a morning man. And Ellen says, like his father. And I'm thinking, no, he's gone sailing. Come on. Really?
Yeah, who's up that early? Or teenagers up that early in the summer?
Nope.
Not I.
No, I live for the weekend so I can sleep late. Because it's better sleep for me between the hours of like 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. Those are just the hours where I really get well rested. I don't know why. It's how I am.
I feel you. I'm the same way. Very nocturnal when I sleep.
Yeah. I could get things done in the middle of the night so much easier than during the daytime. It's just the way that I am.
Yeah, and my work schedule works with it, so it's great. I saw like a meme on Facebook, and my boss even liked it when I posted it because she was like, "She gets me." Where it was just like this like Aqua Teen Hunger Force kind of meme, where it's like Master Shake being like, "It is 2:30 in the afternoon. People are trying to sleep. Why are you calling?"
I feel that way on the weekends when the neighbor starts like working in his garage and making noise. I'm like, what are you doing? It's 8:30 in the morning on a Saturday. Are you sure you want to be up? People are trying to sleep. So yeah, those are just some of the quotes that I liked. I think my favorite one out of all of them was sharks don't take things personally, Mr. Bird. Because I just thought it was great.
Nice.
She was wrong.
Because they do.
All right. Do you have any extra notes, Rima?
It's more of a fun fact. And it took me this long to notice. And I'm curious if y'all saw it. In the front of the Brody house, and I believe this was in the evening when we get a really good shot of it, but Chief Brody is exiting his vehicle, walking to the front of the house. And in the front of the house is a yellow bear. Looks like from the Orca that's being used as a planter.
Did not catch that.
Yes.
That's fun. That is
yes.
fun.
I uncovered that when I was looking through like different trivia items. And that was one of the things that came up.
I like that.
Yeah. I thought, oh my gosh. I don't know if it was just like, because it's an old film, unless you've got like a really great version of it or something. I feel like it's, the film quality's not
Like
what we have today.
Of course
It's,
not.
So I don't know if I've just missed it all those years, but I thought, oh my gosh, it's just such a nice little subtle nod, to the first movie. And you almost question, like, why would he still have that, But then
it's like a trophy in a way. Yeah.
Like a reminder. Yeah, like a trophy, a reminder, like, he freaking survived, man. Him, and Hooper, that, survived that and swam in using those, hitching up those barrels and being able to kind of float and swim in. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a nice memory of what you overcame.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought that was super cool. And speaking of Hooper, we got the mention, but, we didn't get any Hooper in this film. I love, Richard
he managed
Dreyfuss.
to actually get out of
I think he's
in
great.
This movie. He really did avoid it.
He did.
Oh, yeah.
I think he said that if Spielberg wasn't directing, he wasn't going to do it. So, but I love Richard Dreyfuss, but I was like, I really miss Hooper. Cause there was something really, I know Quint obviously wasn't going to be in this one, but it was just something magic about that trio, out on that boat. And so, it would have been cool to have Hooper part of it, but that's okay. We got a little mention of him.
Conveniently out on the Aurora.
He's like in the Arctic doing something.
Yeah, I think they said he was out in the Aurora,
out of range for 6 months. Yeah.
Jeez, can't imagine. But anyway, I thought that was really cool. That's really all the notes. I think we've talked about all of my others. So
all right. So I don't think I have a whole lot that we haven't already talked about. I just again like casting with Roy Scheider and Lorraine Gary back as the Brodies. But Michael and Sean recast and aged up. Obviously, however, again, the age thing I talked about, I was like, math isn't computing. How old are they? How long for?
It was weird.
Hendricks, the other police officer, is an interesting character. He had kind of went up and down. Like, he was great sometimes. Other times, I'm like, God, this guy is whiny. I don't want to look for dead people. It's getting late, and I want to go home and watch Wheel of Fortune. Dr. Elkins, again, I liked her. We don't see her much at all, really. She has the one scene, and that's it with the killer whale. But interesting. It seems like she definitely knew what she was talking about. Like, she didn't want to jump to conclusions about the shark thing, but she was also telling Brody, like, you also could be right. Like, it could be also. And then, the last one, just with the Shark Tower again, and like how weirded out by that Vaughn and Peterson are, where like the little girl's like, that's a shark. There's like, no, it's a bird watching thing. And it's like, they're like, I know.
Mental gymnastics.
Like, they're so worried about people like knowing that there's a place that people can watch out for sharks. It's like, you'd think you want people on the beach to know that you're keeping an eye out for danger just in case, right? Like, man, these two really hate how cautious Brody is, don't they? Like, they're like, why do we want to care about? It's like, if we pretend that sharks don't exist, they'll never happen.
Exactly. It already happened once. It can't possibly happen again, right?
They've forgotten. Yeah. It's like it happened 4 years ago. It's out of their minds. It's like it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. So that's all the other notes that I had.
Well, you know what I have. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we should just jump in, right?
Let's go.
Okay. So Universal wanted to do a sequel to Jaws because of the success of the original movie. Very early on, they decided they wanted to do a sequel. We already talked about this is 4 years after the events of the original. Many of the scenes... Yes. Many scenes had to be shot in fall and winter months. As such, actors had to suck ice cubes prior to takes to avoid having their breath seen on camera. And when the crew went back to Martha's Vineyard for reshoots, many of the trees had already lost their leaves, so the crew had to put fake leaves on the trees to make it look like it was still summer.
Oh my goodness. What was your job on this for the film?
I was a leafer for Jaws 2.
Yeah.
So Roy Scheider was paid $400,000 to reprise the role of Chief Brody. That's 4 times what he got for the original movie.
Oh, wow. He only got $100,000 for Jaws. I hope he got some residuals or something off there.
Like, even, like, that seems low even for the 70s. Like...
Yeah.
Even for this...
Yeah. For a blockbuster.
Mm. Well, and I don't know what the... saying that, I don't know what the budget was. I feel like it probably got very inflated because of the issues that they had and things like that. But still, dang.
So here's where things get a little interesting. So Roy Scheider did not originally want to appear in the movie. But he had left production on The Deer Hunter. He was playing the same role that Robert De Niro played in the movie. This led him to have a conflict with Universal Pictures. He was locked into a multi-film contract with Universal. And the studio agreed to forgive his leaving on The Deer Hunter if he did this film, which they would count as the 2 remaining films on his contract. Scheider agreed to the terms, but he was resentful of his involvement right from the beginning, and he clashed with director Jeannot Szwarc. However, according to his biographer, Roy Scheider was so desperate to be relieved from the role that he pled insanity and went crazy in the Beverly Hills Hotel.
That's awesome.
I'm like, well, okay.
He's going to pull a Walter White. Fugue state! I don't know. I can't do this anymore.
So, John D. Hancock started as the director, but he was fired because the producers wanted a more action-oriented story. He ended up blaming his firing on the mechanical shark and it always breaking down. And I'm just like, where have we heard this before? Not being fired, but the mechanical shark breaking down. Well, that's a common thing with a Jaws film. It's just how it goes. So when Jeannot Szwarc took over, one of the first things he did was bring back the character of Deputy Hendricks. So he wasn't originally going to be in it, so I'm glad that they brought him back.
Yeah.
Spielberg originally did not respond to inquiries about directing the sequel. Spielberg was approached to direct, and Dreyfuss was approached to star in the sequel midway through when they were trying to find a new director. But production on Close Encounters of the Third Kind was running a bit behind, so they really couldn't do it anyway. I get the impression, based on a couple of articles I read, that Spielberg had no intention of being involved.
I don't think after his experience on the first one, he was not going to touch it at all. Like you can hear him talk about it today. And it's like he's talking about it like it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Is how vividly I feel like that.
Yeah, and he's made how many more films since then, but that still sits with him?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the music in this movie was done by the amazing John Williams, who is 91 years old and is still doing music for movies.
I think, I watched the Oscars this year, of course, you know me, and like him being there and still nominated. Like I think this year he was like the oldest nominated, like
probably ever.
Yeah, like in any category really. Like he's just
yeah. It was cool to see him there. Dude's still still rocking it.
So the camera operator used a cowboy saddle to be on top of the shark in some of the scenes where you get things from the shark's point of view. It's amazing if you think about this movie and some of the stuff that they did and how they couldn't rely on CGI, so they had to do it practically. They had to figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's cool.
So here, this was interesting to me. The island of Cable Junction was man-made using plastic and fiberglass. They put the materials on 2 barges. There were a lot of issues with this, as it made the surface a bit too slippery. Resulted in a bunch of retakes because the actors, when they were swimming over to climb up, kept falling off. And also, since it wasn't anchored anywhere, it would drift into the ocean. And so, in the making of Jaws DVD, director Jeannot Szwarc recounted the day that he was informed that his island set was, quote, on its way to Cuba. Can you imagine? Wow. I mean... Yeah. So the helicopter that's used in the aerial shots belonged to a real-life ex-Army pilot named Jerry Baxter. was hired when he was running a crop dusting business after the filmmakers decided they wanted a helicopter attack and determined that this one was perfect. Baxter was also not only hired to fly it, but was asked to play the part of the harbor patrol pilot as well.
Cool.
In addition, he built the full-scale model that was capsized by the shark using salvage parts and sold it to Universal at the end of the film, once it was all of the production had wrapped up. Like in Jaws, footage of real sharks filmed by Australian divers Ron Taylor and Valerie Taylor were used for the movement shots that could not be achieved using mechanical sharks. The real shark footage in this film is actually just leftover footage from the first Jaws. The rest of it, as we all know, mechanical shark, a new one. It's not Bruce. It's Bruce 2. Brucette. All sorts of names. Or if you're Pake, it's Bernie.
Or Two-Face.
So, Matt Hooper being on the Aurora, that was something he actually turned down in order to come help folks on Amity Island in the first movie. So it's great he got to go and do the work that he wanted to do. The young actors that appeared in the movie had 4 weeks of sailing training. Real hammerhead sharks circled the teen actors during the filming of one scene, because the characters that they were playing were meant to be, freaking out. The crew who were filming from a ways back didn't realize that they were calling for help. Can you imagine?
Terrifying.
Crap. See, it can.
Just the thought about like you're acting in a movie where you're terrified of sharks, and then like real sharks show up, and you're like,
what am I supposed to do here? How do you get attention? So this movie inspired more merchandising and sponsors than the first one. Products included trading cards from Topps, baker's bread, paper cups from Coke, which we saw in the movie because that's what Tina and Eddie were drinking from when they were on the boat. A souvenir program, beach towels, shark tooth necklaces, coloring and activity books, and a model kit of Brody's truck. I want a model kit of Brody's truck.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Same.
So residents of the town enjoy being cast as extras, but some people in the town were less than thrilled with the film crew coming back. Universal Go Home t-shirts began appearing on the streets in mid-June 1977. So before they had really they had filmed some, but yeah, they didn't want them in town. They wanted them to go home. A novel adaptation based on the original Jaws 2 screenplay was written by Hank Searles. Susan Ford, who's the daughter of U.S. President Gerald Ford, was hired to shoot publicity photographs for the movie. And then finally, Jeffrey Voorhees, who played Alex Kintner, who was the second victim of the shark in the first film, said, "Hey, I want to be an extra," but the producers said he'd be too recognizable, so they said, "Nope, you can't be in it." And that's what I have.
No respect.
I know, right?
I still love the story about like the whole like there's like a diner or something named after him, or like something on the menu is named after him or something, and then he like went and got pictures and reunited with like his on-screen mother and all these little things. Like I remember like talking about that story and being like, that's cool. That's good.
That's cool.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It is cool. Oh, that was great.
So yeah, there's a lot. I love movies like this where there's a lot to dig into behind the scenes stuff, because it's difficult with some movies because there's just not enough out there to even build any behind the scenes information. It's like they put the movie together and decided not to release anything. So you just kind of have to cobble something together by reading 50 articles.
Mm-hmm.
So this was good because I was able to find tons. It was culling it down to make it manageable was the hard part. And we talked about a bunch of things during our discussions, so I left them out of the behind the scenes stuff.
Awesome. Well, we did it.
Stuff.
We made it.
Did.
thanks again so much, Rima, for being here.
Yeah.
Again, because we record different times when we release, so like I'm sure by the time this comes out, me and you are back fully in the swing of Sweet Tooth season 2.
You will be, yes.
So people will be able to hear us over there, but as of right now, when we're recording, like we're on a little bit of a break between shows, waiting for that to come out. So it's just like, well, it's good to still hang out with you and podcast with you this week.
I know, this was so fun. I'm so glad that it allowed in my schedule, and I'm so thrilled because I got to have my Pake fix. When we don't talk when we're on our breaks, and I'm like, oh, it's my petty Pake. When we're not podcasting. So it's always great to be here. I have so much fun recording with you guys and talking about these movies. So Thanks again for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you. And it won't be quite as long for you to come back because we will have you come back this season when we hit up the Meg 2, which comes out, I think, the 1st of August. So it's not that far away.
Yeah.
Yay.
That'll be fun.
Can't wait.
So hopefully, if you make it back on the recording for feedback and stuff, because that's, break the fourth wall there a little bit. Sometimes it gets a little bit later on recording. So
yeah,
if you are, awesome. And if not, then awesome. That's fine as well. We're just so glad that you were here for this. So we'll go ahead and maybe give you a chance. I don't know, to plug some stuff, talk about stuff. I mean, I plug Strange Indeed every week anyway, but
thanks. Yeah. Right now I don't have anything else to plug but Strange Indeed, just gearing up for, and like you said, probably by the time this, comes out and is published, we'll already be on season 2 of Sweet Tooth. I'm kind of hanging out and enjoying, a little bit of a break, it's been overwhelming. Also
covering House of the Dragon and Cobra Kai and everything else at the same time.
Yeah. Last year was and even earlier this year was very overwhelming for me. A lot going on. So it's nice just to kind of ease back a little bit and be able to actually enjoy, what I'm doing instead of being stressed out about all the podcasts.
It's hard when they all the shows, it's like they all get together and say, okay, we want to make Rima have to work really hard and we want to drive her nuts. So let's all drop within 2 or 3 weeks of each other. It's crazy.
That's kind of what happened last year. Yeah. Everything was just happening all at once. We had a lot of shows dropping in October and, earlier in the year, it was just one right after another and it was just overwhelming. So I'm glad to just, kind of being in a nice, manageable zone. So this came up at just the right time.
Yeah.
So appreciate it.
Man, what was it stacked on? Where it was just we were doubling up some weeks on. I think it was Lock and Key, Dexter, New Blood, and Midnight Mass or something. We're all
yes,
right around each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even with just our one podcast, it's oh no,
it all drops and it's all too good, and you don't want to say, "Well, wait on this," because you want to strike. I'm getting a better understanding of that. Now that I did Handmaid's Tale and now Yellow Jackets, I have a much better understanding of how it all works. It's crazy trying to balance everything.
It is. It is, but we made it. And it was all
great
good.
Shows, great to cover. So it's always fun. Always worth it. Yeah, so enjoy the time. You've got some downtime now. It's nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Well, that's it. We're pretty good. Oh, well,
there it is.
There goes the feedback phone.
The feedback phone.
Hopefully people are calling in with their thoughts on Jaws 2. Let me get that.
Oh, yeah.
All right, and it looks like we do have some good feedback this week. I'm excited. I'm really loving people are coming through on the feedback this season so far. I mean, we're 2 for 2, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and we've got a good little bit over Jaws 2, but before that, I wanted to highlight a little bit of a feedback that I got from a listener and somebody that I know, Stephanie, who sent a really cool message, and I asked her to make sure it was okay that I could share this one, because it's one of those little moments that made me feel really good. It was very flattering, and I was just oh, that's really cool. So I wanted to share it. So she says, still loving the podcast, And my students and I are going to watch the Super Mario Brothers movie next week and do a Run for Your Lives style analysis afterwards. I'm actually piloting it with our movie day because I am thinking using the format in class for discussing literature next year. I'll let you know how it goes. I teach 9th grade English, so I have to do whatever it takes to keep their attention.
I love this so much.
I love it.
I love
very
that
much.
It's the Run for Your Lives style analysis. Like, it's our analysis because we do things different than a lot of the other podcasts that I listen to. So, yeah, it makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, me too. So thanks so much, Stephanie, for that message and for letting me kind of share that because it's really cool. And also, yeah, I would love to hear how that went because now, since you've messaged me that, like, this past week, this, like, last week of school, if your school that you're at is similar to the ones here that I'm at, so this is the last week. So, yeah, let me know how that went, because I am very curious to see how they reacted or, how they took that and how they engaged with it, because that's really cool, and it could be really fun to, like, have them break down, especially with literature stuff, because that's what I was thinking. It's like, that's a cool way to, if you're going by character arcs and really discovering, like, where people go from one point of the story to the next is really cool. So, thanks again for that.
Yeah. Well, getting into the Jaws 2 feedback, Tony from Twitter says, I love shark movies, and this one was a favorite when I was a kid. I wanted to say that these two actresses, and she posted 2 photos, did an incredible job looking terrified. Although after a while, I wanted to push Jackie in the water. I'm kidding. Good movie. Shark looks horrible. Story and acting strong.
Nice. Works. The next one comes from Howard Bannister. Says, Jaws freaked me out as a child. I never saw Jaws 2, but Jaws 3D was so hilarious and campy, terrible and fabulous at the same time.
I think Rima and I decided maybe we wouldn't do that one. But I don't know. Maybe we'll have to revisit it.
Just sometimes it's fun to cover a bad movie just to have fun with it.
Alma Contreras says, Jaws 2 is my favorite one of them all. I loved the teenagers being in peril. I also liked how Brody was super paranoid that everyone thought he was crazy. I think Jaws 2 is up there for me too. I really liked it.
It's good. As people heard this episode, it was my first time watching it. And I don't know, I was just always under the assumption that, like, all the sequels were terrible, but I didn't realize the second one's actually pretty good.
It is.
And this last write-in feedback here comes from Catherine Peters. Says, I saw Jaws 2 on TV several times before seeing the original Jaws. I was a bit younger than the little brother Sean and would often pretend I was him and reenact the movie in my backyard, pretending my swing set was the various broken sailboats jumping from section to section to avoid Jaws, often played by my cats. While Jaws is the better movie by far, Jaws 2 is responsible for my love of sharks and horror movies with animals as the villain. I'm so excited for this episode.
Yay,
awesome. Well, I hope you really enjoyed it. Yeah.
We do have one voicemail from our friend Mark. So let's go ahead and hear what he has to say.
Hey, Daphne and Pake. Mark here. I just wanted to leave you some feedback for Jaws 2, but to talk about Shaun of the Dead. Love the podcast. Sorry I didn't leave any feedback for that. It was a really good episode. I enjoyed it so much. You guys did great, and I love the pop-up video thing that Pake was talking about with the DVD. The cool thing, though, is on the Blu-ray, though, for Shaun of the Dead, they did have side kind of extra stories, like with Diane in a tree talking about David and all this good stuff, but that's something that people could check out on the Blu-ray that I thought was pretty cool. I didn't really go back into it and watch it, but I'm just going on what I remember, what I have. I have the Blu-ray. But for Jaws 2, well, I kind of grew up on this movie and I loved it. It was replayed back in, I think, 80 or 81 on TV, so that was probably my first exposure to the movie, and I always remember that one more than I do the original because, I wasn't really born around the time, or I was, and I couldn't go see the original. But the Jaws 2 was something that I grew up on, and I just enjoyed it. And it was something that I loved. The fact that, we get more of Bruce 2, the shark, which I love, and the way they're able to get rid of him, but we get more. The Bruce 2 shark actually worked. But the tension and everything of the kids going out and going with the boat and everything always got to me as a kid, and I always enjoyed that. A lot of the people that were in the movie, obviously we got Chief Brody back, we got his wife back, we got the mayor, and it's typically the same story again, but 4 years later. But the kids are all grown up, and we get more out of it. And they did a really good thing. I think this is probably one of those movies that was a sequel that actually lived up to a little bit to the original to some degree, where we enjoyed it and gave us the same thrills and feels that we did from the original one. But the fact that we get the charred Jaws, Bruce chomping on that power line and burning up, and Brody, saving the day with the kids, that was really cool. I always found it intense, loved it. But the cool thing about that, I think they used the original Bruce shark for Universal Studios. They changed out the one that was the one in California, and they put this one in there. Or maybe they put this one in Florida, in Universal Studios Florida later on. But I just love this movie, and I'm glad that you guys are covering it. I enjoyed rewatching it again, thankfully, because I'm out of work for a while, and it was like, oh, let me watch that and leave some feedback. But I look forward to what you guys have to say about it, and just want to state, I enjoyed it too, and I look forward to what you guys have to say. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for writing in and checking it out, and thanks for the words of support on our Shaun of the Dead episode. It was a fun season premiere for sure. We had a blast.
Yeah, I think it might be one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great start. So if you'd like to submit your feedback, like anyone who sent in feedback this week, you can do so a number of ways. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Run for Your Lives Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at RFYL Podcast. Email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much all other podcast players, including YouTube. Go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links you'll ever need, and give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that's the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we do. Always. And of course, talking about sharing the love, got to give some shout outs to things going on in the podcast universe around us. My other podcast, Strange Indeed, me and Rima are still going strong on Sweet Tooth. We are halfway through the season, and it has been quite the ride. Getting a lot of good feedback and stuff over there, including from Daphne, who's been giving some great thoughts. Always enjoying that.
I love that show, and it's so good to be back in that world. The season is just going so fast.
It is. A lot is happening in short time. It feels, I was thinking about it because I've watched episode 5 already. We'll record next week. And I realized, people are having issues. They're like, oh, they're still in the same place. And is this happening? But then I really thought about it. And I'm like, the pacing has honestly been great because there's still a lot of things happening within the story.
Yeah.
And they're dumping a lot on us, especially when it gets to this back half we'll keep covering this next week. Yeah, it's great. I love the show so much. One of my absolute favorites. So it's fun to be covering it. And a show that you absolutely love and that you've been covering is ending this week. You're going to be recording and putting out the final episode of the season very soon, this weekend as well. So
yeah, I'm not ready, but I am ready. I'm ready to know what happens in the finale. I'm not sure I'm ready for it to be over, Originally, I thought the season had 10 episodes and it only has 9. Mm-hmm. So this is it. In fact, when we're recording this, I'm planning to watch it when we're done.
Yeah. And of course, that is really Yellow Jackets. Is over on Showtime. Yellow Jackets WTF podcast. You guys have been great over there working through this season with lots of stuff. That show just dumps so much on you.
It does. And you run the gamut of emotions because it's so intense. But then you care about the characters, but they're all so complicated that you don't like them even though you love them. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's definitely a show that has brought out a lot of feelings when I watch it.
Yeah, it's a great one. And speaking of other great shows going on, like Podcastica's covering a lot of great stuff. Of course, What Is From cast over there with the show From on MGM Plus, which has also been incredible. Alex and Liz just running through that season, still going. So yeah, if you're watching From season 2, which if you're not, you should be, definitely check it out.
Oh, yeah.
It's so good. And I think the first season is on Amazon Prime, so you can go check that out, get caught up, because I highly recommend getting into that show. It is amazing. So you can catch their coverage there.
I'm dying to know what's going to happen on that one. I'm glad that not all of my shows are ending at the same time. Mm-hmm. Still have a little more time with that one.
Yeah. Also, if you're a fan of The Marvelous Miss Maisel, which is in its final season, you can go check out Perfectly Marvelous to see Jade, Kara, and Erica covering that final season over there. They've been doing really well over there. A lot of great feedback and interaction on that podcast. I think people are really loving that, so go check that out. And then The Cast of Us does have an episode up this week. Of course, not The Last of Us. We're going to have a while to wait on that show. But that's fine. We'll take what we can get. But over there, The Power, because I think it was Lucy, Karen, and Karen, maybe, that did the first half?
Yeah.
The two Karens. I think so. I know Lucy and Karen for sure. Karen Morvay were for sure on there. But they did the first half of The Power on Amazon Prime, the first 4 episodes. And so now Lucy, Wendy, and Sydney are back to tackle the back half of that season of the show. So if you have watched The Power over on Amazon Prime, which I know some people have, I've talked to some people who listen to this podcast who big fan of that show. I need to catch up. I've watched the first half. Now I need to binge through the second half so I can check out their thoughts on it. Because, yeah, it's a very interesting show for sure. So go check that out. Check out their coverage over there on the Cast of Us feed. And lastly, going to give a little shout out to Mark, who gave us his voicemail earlier, his Panels to Pixels podcast, covering Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, now that it is out on Disney+. A lot of people have a little more access to that, so Mark doing a little coverage for you over there, so go check that out as well. But yeah, that's it for other podcasts, but you can definitely come back and check out Run for Your Lives again next week, because we will have something fun for you. What is that, Daphne?
We are going into the world of James DeMonaco. We are flipping the order of the way that we cover this film series, because Pake, well, I told him I wanted to cover the Purge series for a while, and instead of covering it with the original Purge movie that came out, we are going to cover the first Purge first, meaning we're covering the 2018 prequel. Mm-hmm. And this one was directed by Gerard McMurray. It's in the Purge universe, and we're going to learn about how it all started.
Yeah. Very interesting. I interested to get into this series. I've only ever seen The Purge, the original movie, in theaters when it first came out. So this was my first time watching the first Purge, which is the fourth Purge. It's confusing, but not really.
It's kind of hard to explain to people, because I had mentioned that we were covering the first Purge, and people thought it was the first Purge movie.
Yeah.
Not the movie The First Purge. So yes. I had to, clarify that.
Yeah. But, we'll go through all of those movies. We actually have quite a few like series of movies that we're starting this season. We've got lined up. We'll kind of show you where we're going with those as we get to them. But yeah, that I'm excited to start playing with a little bit. But that will be one of them for sure that we're going to start going through. Not all at once, but we'll trickle them in from time to time. And we'll start with, chronologically, the first Purge, where it all starts.
Yes. After several years of acclimating to the Tremors universe, I am bringing Pake along and into the world of the Purge.
So if you have any thoughts, if you've seen that one, or if you want to take the time to go and watch it, check it out, and give us your feedback for next week. We'd love to hear from you.
We definitely would. And with that, we've reached the end of our episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.